Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to all join in, and then we'll get started with Kelly. All right. Welcome to our webinar, Navigating Alzheimer's and Dementia, Practical Strategies for Family Caregivers, featuring Kelly McCarthy. You may have come across this webinar through one of our Hallbridge senior living communities. Hallbridge is a collaboration between Hawkeen Management and Northbridge Companies, offering innovative independent living, assisted living, and memory care services. Our speaker today is Kelly McCarthy, Northbridge's memory care expert and author of Ring Memoirs. Kelly will be sharing insights from the first 4 chapters of her book, equipping you with evidence-based techniques and compassionate strategies to better support loved ones navigating Alzheimer's and dementia at home. As a special thank you, the first 10 registrants will receive a copy of Ring Memoirs, but it's also available anywhere books are sold. Throughout today's session, Kelly may invite you to participate. Feel free to use the chat to submit your thoughts, and you're welcome to leave any questions as we go. Kelly will address these questions at the end of the session. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kelly McCarthy.
Hello, and thank you so much, Kristen, for that great introduction. And thank you for joining. I'm really excited about being able to talk to you about the book Ring Memoirs, encouraging stories using practical methodologies to help caregivers reach for their goals in Alzheimer's and dementia care. Okay, so if it was on Facebook, it must be true, right? We've perfected the Zoom aspect of this, although you're all on mute. If you're together, I might ask questions. Feel free to answer them together and talk about it. Also, as Kristen had mentioned, if there are questions that I ask, please feel free to use the chat, write it down. Maybe it might generate some questions for you, and then we can address that at the end of the program. And so I have been to many of these all of these places multiple times, as you can see. And I started on Facebook years ago to watch my kids to make sure they were behaving. But then I started tagging myself everywhere. And the majority of these were from working in communities, working in senior living, working with family members and frontline associates with regards to memory care. And trust me, I pride myself on not only being a teacher. During these times, I was a student, and I learned so much. And a couple of things that I learned that was what was happening in Walla Walla, Washington, was also happening in Jacksonville, Florida. And so I was able to get all this wonderful information and insight from family members and associates from our communities, and really understood the importance that I could share and bring this to the forefront of the industry. And so that's why I wrote the book. And so the book is called Ring Memoirs, Encouraging Stories, as I had mentioned. And so Reaching for the Brass Ring is actually the title of the book. Is the picture of the book on the front is me at a merry-go-round. There are 11 merry-go-rounds in the United States, or at least there was when I wrote the book, that were active. So again, you're on mute, but how many of you have ever reached for the brass ring? So you see this picture of this little girl, and she is reaching for the goal. If you've played this game before, you know that there's only one brass ring in that big arm that she's reaching for. The rest are silver. And when you get that one brass ring, you save it for the conductor and you give it to them, and they end up giving you a free ride on the merry-go-round. So the reason why I use this concept is that it's about a goal, right? We have a goal. This little girl has a goal. And in senior living and in memory care specifically, we have goals. And we reach for them. Just like this girl, sometimes we catch it and sometimes we don't. But the biggest thing is the sun still comes up the next day. And I think sometimes that's something that we really need to look at, because memory care, we don't always get it right. And so that concept was kind of generated from, you know, a lot of information I've shared throughout the country. Now, but this isn't chapter 1. This is actually chapter 2. I'm going to leave chapter 1 for the end, and I will share the reason why later. So reaching for the brass ring in memory care, knowing and acknowledging a person's past accomplishments, understanding the effects of the road not taken. So knowing knowing a person's goals, knowing their likes and dislikes, knowing their preferences are so important in being able to care for them. But also knowing the road not taken, things that they may have had some challenges with. Appreciating a person's short-term brass rings and their long-term brass rings. So I got a question for you. If you think about memory loss, someone with memory loss, are they going to be more successful with short-term brass rings or long-term brass rings? So again, you can throw that in the chat. You guys can talk amongst yourselves. And so if you said that, hey, Kelly, I think that they're more successful with long-term brass rings, you're right. That which comes from the past is often far more real than the current. So long-term brass rings become more successful. But that doesn't mean that short-term brass rings aren't just as important and can be successful too. So you're sitting wherever you are right now. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. How do you feel? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? Hopefully you had dinner already, so you feel full, content. So these are some of the things that are short-term brass rings. And it's not about remembering if I had supper. It's about feeling safe, feeling, loved. I think the biggest thing that we can give anybody with memory loss is the sense of belonging, to feel like I belong. And I think that's the one short-term memory kind of brass ring that we can give each other as we're caring for someone with memory loss and them. Knowing when it's okay to drop your brass ring and pick up the person you're caring for. So I know that oftentimes as a caregiver, we feel that because the person has memory loss and their judgment may be off, that we want to hold on to the brass ring. We know best. So we're going to make sure that we're taking care of them. And I could give you an example of maybe someone saying, what a beautiful, and it was a beautiful day today, but let's say what a beautiful Friday it is today. And oftentimes, because we're in our right mind, we might think or say, oh yeah, it was a great day, but it's not Friday. It's Tuesday, and man, it feels like it's going to be a long week, right? And so we want to make sure that if they're not hurting anybody, give them that confidence to say, hey, you know what? And we don't have to say that it's Friday or it's not. You could just say, you know what? It is a beautiful day today. But you know what's the best about today? I'm here with you. And so we'll talk about what that is in one of the methodologies that I use. But it's really about making sure that you understand that we're not the only ones with brass rings. The person with memory care challenges also has a brass ring. So how many of you have actually said to someone, hey, do you want to take a shower? And it's your brass ring, right? But guess what? Their brass ring is, no, I don't want to take one. They might say, I already took one, right? Or I didn't get dirty. I don't need to take a shower. So our goal, and I'll be talking about this in the next couple of slides, is to put these brass rings together. But if you can't do that, what I want you to do is drop your brass ring and pick up the persons you're caring for. As long as they're not hurting anybody, we can get back to that brass ring later, but we really want to make sure that we're not making them angry to the point that they're going to be, have a catastrophic reaction, which is like this major blow up or something very small. So we just want to make sure that you drop your brass ring, pick up the persons you're caring for when things don't seem to be going right. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But this goes along with that. So when I say getting the brass rings together, I mean, look beneath the surface, let not the several quality of a thing, nor its worth escape thee. You look at this iceberg and 10% of who a person is on top. 90% is on the bottom. And the bottom is the good, the stuff I can't wait to share with you, right? But guess what? There's also the bad. the stuff I'm going to avoid saying today. And then there's the ugly, the stuff you hope the heck nobody finds out about. We all have that. We all have good stuff that we're proud of, bad stuff that happens in our lives, right? And the ugly. So what's really important is making sure that when you're a caregiver, that you are supporting this person, not only what's on the top, but you're learning and you're sharing what's underneath. And so I'm going to give you an example. So I've got, and I know I'm a small picture here. I've got 2 brass rings in front of me. And so if I didn't want to take a shower, one way to get these brass rings together is to know something about me. 2 things. One is that I love Dove soap, the pink bar. Yeah, I don't travel with it, but when I'm home and I use it, I know I'm home. It's the 2/3 moisturizing cream, smells like roses, and it's just my soap. And so it is, to me, something special. But also, I brush my teeth in the shower. Now, that may not be socially acceptable to everyone, but it's something that I do, which means that if you said to me, hey, Kel, here's your toothbrush, right? And the water's warm, that's going to cue me. You're not going to say, do you want to take a shower? Because when you say, do you want to take a shower? Do you want to take your pills? Do you want to, what do people tend to say? And so if you yelled out, they say no, that typically is what they'll say. So what you want to do is you want to be able to give them that ability to feel like they belong, that we know them, we know what's under their iceberg. We know some of the things that are going to be triggers, like I said, road not taken, that might be upsetting to someone, or things that might have happened in their lives that could cause a trigger while you're giving someone a shower or doing care. Or their personality. Are they have a strong personality? Are they someone that's very independent versus someone who, could be much more applicable to having someone help? So knowing these things and being able to help them is so important. So that's the iceberg. In my book, at the end of each chapter, I talk about takeaways. So for home-based caregivers, I say to you, the more that you share the information with caregivers that you're entrusted, the more successful your loved one's going to be. So the more you share about the good, the bad, and the not so good, the more successful your loved one's going to be. And then for the community-based caregivers, and I ask you, if you do pick up the book or you receive the book, read both takeaways, whether you are a home-based community or a care-based. That way you understand each other's challenges, and sometimes it definitely resonates with both of you. So working in a care team, oftentimes caregivers, if they don't know what's under a person's iceberg, if they don't know who this person is, that maybe Kelly refuses to take a shower and I don't know that she brushes her teeth in the shower and that's the way I can get her in. Then, maybe if Kelly keeps saying no and maybe she starts getting angry, I look for the nurse and I say, hey, do we have anything for this person? Right? We all know what that means. They end up resorting to a mood stabilizer that may mask the unmet need. And so it's so important for family members to share what's under the iceberg. So I have another question for you. And you can put this in the chat or you can just think about it. We can write it down. Why is it that some family members or loved ones not want to share what's under someone's iceberg? Why is it that sometimes family caregivers, especially if they're going in maybe for respite care or if they're going in for, they're going to live in a beautiful, assisted living. So why is it that family members not want to? So I do see some people answering. So if you answered, maybe they're embarrassed, maybe they don't know a person, they don't know everything, maybe they're afraid. And I had a caregiver look at me one time that was at a community and she said, I wonder if the family members are afraid that we won't take them. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And so one of the things we talk about, or that I would encourage you, is that the communities that we we have, whether it be the Hallbridge communities, is that Hall Keene, I'm sorry, is that we really want to make sure that people understand what's under the iceberg. It's not their first rodeo. I always say that, in senior living and memory care, the more we know about a loved one, their routines, their habits, the more successful they'll become. And so it's not a pass-fail. We know in senior living that people have habits and routines like brushing their teeth in the shower that may not be a socially acceptable thing, but it's something that working in memory care, we make sure that people understand that that's a habit and a routine that's a wonderful thing to have and to know about in a community. So I put this in here only because it's easy. Think about this, think about your loved one, think about you. I like to say, put your name on the top, your first name, and then what's around you that people can see. Can they see your personality? If you're friendly, if you are outgoing, can they see, the color of your hair, if you have glasses or not? And then all the stuff below. And again, the good, the bad, and the not so good. Understanding that it's not about someone judging, it's about the information that we know is really going to help us care for a person. I'm going to give you a quick story, a quick example. I was in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and there was this gentleman who had 200 acres, and he lived with his wife, and he moved into our memory care, and we were having a hard time giving him a shower. And I called his wife and said, we love having your husband as a part of our extended family. We are having some challenges, and I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit of insight from when he was home. And so I asked about showering and his routine. So of course, with acres and acres of this farming land, he would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He would till the fields. He would, milk the cows and all kinds of stuff in that farm. And then around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he would come back in after he milked the cows for the second time. He would grab an old Milwaukee beer in the fridge, which he was reluctant to tell me at first. Because she felt like there was judgment. And so she said he grabbed an old Milwaukee beer, he went in the shower. He got out of the shower, he brought the old Milwaukee beer, put it on the kitchen table, and he proceeded to have dinner. After dinner, he took his old Milwaukee beer, he sat on the recliner, watched one TV show till about 7:30. Then he went to bed and he did it over again. So for all his hard work on the farm, he had one old Milwaukee beer that he took in the shower, that he brought to the dining room table, and that he finished at the TV. And so I was so grateful for that information. And you know what we did next, which was call the doctor, get an order for an old Milwaukee beer. And you know what? We never had a problem with him after that. And it wasn't his problem, it was ours because we didn't know it. And so little things like that, routines and habits can really create a successful environment. And that's why sometimes family members don't share, but boy, what an impact it makes when it does get shared. So this is my favorite chapter. This is the last chapter that I'll be talking about before I go back to the first, which is my favorite chapter, and it's about peacock moments. So how do you think this peacock feels? So you can put it on your chat bar. You can yell it out. How does this peacock feel? So if any of you said proud, I'm going to give you 3 of them. So if anybody said proud, absolutely proud as a peacock. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this peacock either feels beautiful or handsome. This is one beautiful peacock. Now, does a peacock just stand there? If not, what does that peacock do? So some of you might say strut. And if you were fortunate enough to have me in person, I'd be doing it across the floor. So this peacock would strut. And so what do you need to strut across the floor of a big event where there's a lot of people around? So I see definitely some chat numbers going up here, and I would say that you're probably saying you need confidence. Absolutely. So the reason why I call these peacock moments is that as the disease progresses, oftentimes I feel that people are robbed of their pride. People can very easily be robbed of their beauty. And people being robbed of their confidence. And sometimes it's inadvertently, sometimes it's not anything that we do other than, people are starting to forget and you're like, hey, you just forgot again. What do you mean? I just told you already. So these things that end up happening at the very beginning stages that can be like, what is this? And it can be very confusing. So in my book, I talk about the 18-wheeler concept, but I found this online and I absolutely love it. So I interjected this. So there's a part of the brain called the amygdala. And I like to go over this, and this is a part of a great example of first in, last out information, and then also how the brain deteriorates. And I do believe this is a game changer. So does anybody out there know what a healthy brain weighs? So you can put it on the chat, or you can kind of talk amongst yourself. A healthy brain. So a healthy brain weighs approximately 3 pounds. So this bookshelf is a healthy brain. On the left side is our hippocampus. This is where we learn logic, fact, and reasoning. Then on the right-hand side is the amygdala. The amygdala is where there's emotions. This is a part of the limbic system. This is where there's emotions and memories. And so if you look at this bookshelf, we've got broken into childhood at the very bottom, teenage years, adult, middle age, and old age. So if you look at the childhood years, this is where we learn our primary colors, we learn our numbers, we learn right from wrong. When we go to touch a stove and somebody says, no, no, hot, right? So on the right-hand side is the emotional aspect. So this is where the good, the bad, the ugly. This could be, again, limbic system, fight or flight, excitement in a good way, but it can also be tragic. So that's that right side bookshelf. And this is really important to know as the disease progresses. So this is the healthy brain. If you look at teenage years, this is where we learn algebra. I don't still know why I did, but I learned algebra in my teenage years. And then on the other side, where the feelings and the emotions, this is where maybe we remember our prom, first kiss, maybe summers at the beach, all that stuff, or the mountains. And then adulthood, this is where you start learning a profession, or you go to continuing education for school. You're learning how to raise a household. Middle age, again, same thing. Maybe you've perfected your career. Old age might be downsizing, and you're still learning because maybe you're negotiating or navigating, I should say, through a new living arrangement, knowing what time is dinner, knowing where you do laundry, knowing all those things, that novel learning that you need to do. So that's that hippocampus. Again, the amygdala is all those other experiences that are emotions, and we're going to go through this. So here's early stage dementia. Now, if you notice on the hippocampus, there's a few books off the shelf. So my question to you is, when someone starts having dementia or some form of dementia, Alzheimer's or related dementias, what's one of the first signs that we see? And just call it out, you're on mute, say it loud and proud. So if you said repeating, right, forgetfulness, repeating, you got it. So if you look at this, old age, somebody has memory loss, and now they start saying, what time is supper? And they repeat it again. What time is supper? And then they repeat it again. What time is supper? How does that make the person who's the caregiver feel sometimes? When if they've heard it once, they've heard it 100 times. And so oftentimes we might get frustrated. And if somebody says, what time is supper? And it's multiple times, as a caregiver, we might say, I told you already, it's 5 o'clock, right? And so and I don't know, again, I'm in a small little window here, but my brow is furrowed, my voice is, quick. And so you can only imagine how emotionally they feel. So look at the amygdala. The amygdala's books, there are none off the shelf. That means that person feels exactly the way we would. If somebody said, no, you're wrong, you forgot, don't you remember? You have that forgetting disease. And the list can go on and on. And so it's just to identify when you are caring for somebody with memory loss, to really be mindful that the person feels just like we do, and that they can still feel embarrassed, right? So if you had memory loss and somebody said, you told me that, you've asked me that already. This is like the 3rd time. So think about the feelings. How could a person feel? And you're more than welcome to write that in your comment section. But if you said they could feel mad, right? how dare you? I didn't say it. Maybe they've forgotten I didn't say it more than once. How about if they feel embarrassed, right? They feel isolated and scared. They're going to just not even talk, because if I'm going to get it wrong, I might as well just be quiet. We know that Alzheimer's and depression go hand in hand, especially early stages when somebody remembers or they're reminded constantly that they're forgetting. So this is just something that we want you to be mindful of, and I think is such a value add as a caregiver. So here's mid-stage memory loss. So there's a lot of books now off the shelf on the hippocampus, logic, fact, and reasoning. But let me give you a story. Boy meets girl in childhood. And so down here in childhood, you can see that they met maybe, and they lived in the same neighborhood. After they were in those years in childhood and teenage years, they started dating. At the end of those child's years, maybe he proposed, they got married. She was pregnant and he went off to the military. So now in adulthood, right at those first 3 books in adulthood, she's beginning a household, he's learning a trade, maybe in the military, and they're going to live their life. And so on the right-hand side are all the wonderful things that could happen in a relationship, all the terrible things that could happen in a relationship and in life, right? Life isn't always neat and in a package. Sometimes it can be messy. So on the emotional side is on that right-hand side. Now let's fast forward to 85 years old, and his name is Jack, and he died. She has memory loss, and she says to her child or her daughter, where's my husband? Where's my husband? Where's Jack? And so if you look on the amygdala side, there's not a lot of books off the shelf. So she can still feel. She can still feel. And so what would she feel if you looked at her and said, your husband died? What are some of the emotions that could be brought up for her? Now, I want you to be mindful as you're answering this, because if she looked at me and said, or her daughter, and said, did my husband die? Did Jack die? Now she's asking the question, which means she understands, or she potentially remembers that. That might be a different answer that you're going to give her. If somebody looked at me and said, what a beautiful Friday it is, I might say, yeah, you know what? It is a beautiful day, but I'm glad I'm here with you. But if they looked at me and said, wow, what a beautiful day is today, Friday, I'm not going to say, yes, it is, if it's not, because they're asking the question. So that's where you kind of have to, it's person-centered. You really have to know the person, but understanding that if they're questioning it, that's one thing. If they're stating it, it's another. And so knowing that person, understanding who they are, and let me give you an example. I had a gentleman that was at one of my communities, and he looked at me and he said, good morning, chum. That was his nickname for me. And I said, good morning, chum. And that was, he thought chum was friend, and that was it. And we service plan that we could call him chum. And so he looked at me and he said, do you know where my wife is? And I knew that he knew yesterday that his wife had died. His wife died 11 years ago, but I wasn't going to say anything to him. At that point, I knew that he had some altered change, right? And it's called cognitive mental change in his capacity. I knew what was under his iceberg. I said, you know what? It's 8 o'clock. And so she might be at the county school. She was a school teacher. And so he said, oh, okay. And he started to walk away, and I said, okay, have a good day. But I didn't let that go. Who did I tell? So if you think about it, I told everyone, but specifically the nurse, because he had a change in mental status. And we don't want to just assume that that's a part of the memory challenge that he has. So what we did was we ended up pulling a urine and doing a culture to see if there was a urinary tract infection. And there wasn't. This was a part of his decline in cognitive ability, but we wanted to rule it out. It's very easy to rule out infections. It's very easy to rule out urinary tract infections. And I always say that is the first mode of understanding if somebody has a changing condition, is to be looking at the medical and then seeing, because again, oftentimes you'll see someone decline, and if they take that antibiotic or whatever it needs to be to fix that infection, they can go back to their baseline, which again can help in that situation. So just thinking about that is so important, but understanding that the person, if you look at this, that woman did not forget her husband. If you look at the amygdala side, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of memories, a lot of feelings, a lot of things that she still had with that husband. The books are off the shelf are the fact that he died. And that can be very, very sad. And it can be very overwhelming. You can only imagine if you say to her, he died, what are some of the feelings that she'll have? Because her amygdala is still intact. So if you said, sadness, profound sadness, oh my God, nobody told me, right? How about anger? Who the heck are you? I had breakfast with my husband this morning. Those things can absolutely cause some challenges. So we just want to be mindful of that and knowing, and the response can be different for each person. And yeah, I remember for that one gentleman, I utilized his daughter that lived up in Maine to support a fiblet. And a fiblet is a therapeutic lie that decreases anxiety. Let me tell you, I'm not a person that says, hey, give out fiblets every chance you can. Fiblets are therapeutic lies that decrease anxiety, which are okay to do. But I really think it's important to know that if they work, right, if it works, tell everybody. But if it doesn't work and the person gets angry, still make sure you tell everybody, because you don't want to make that mistake again. And so this particular person, the fiblet worked for him, where she actually would call him and say, Mom's with me. He actually lived in Rhode Island, and she said, Mom's with me. The weather's bad up here and we're going to wait. And so she's safe, and I want you to know she's safe. She's with me, Dad. So that worked. And those are some of the things that you kind of have to work with a family or with your team to understand, what are some of the approaches we can give to that person. Now here's late stage memory loss. And I know I had asked the question, how much does a healthy brain weigh? So can anybody repeat that? You're right. I heard you. 3 pounds. Perfect. How about now? And you've got it up on the chat. Awesome. How about late stage memory loss? How much does a brain weigh in the end stage? Now, to give you a hint, amyloid fluid disappears. There's not as much. The brain shrinks, not allowing the neurons to fire across. And so there's a lot of, as you can see, the hippocampus, logic, fact, and reasoning, there's a lot of things that have disappeared. So if you answered 1 pound, you're correct. So late stage memory loss, 1 pound. And so if you see here, you've got a lot of things off the hippocampus, but look at the amygdala. The amygdala still has books on the shelf. I'm telling you, when I saw this and when I heard this spoken many, many years back, I realized this was a game changer for caregivers caring for someone with memory loss. Because what this shows you is that, yes, cognitively they're declining. But if you look at their hippocampus, their amygdala, their emotions, their feelings, they can still feel. So this means that if you're caring for a loved one, late stage memory loss, and you're not talking with them, maybe you go into their room and check, their feet are on the bed, they're breathing, maybe they're in and out of consciousness, but you walk out of that room, how can they feel? So again, think about that. You guys say it out loud, put it in the chat bar. How does somebody feel? Because even though they have end stage memory loss, if we're not going in and connecting with them and talking with them, they can still feel isolated. They can still feel sad. They can still feel lonely, right? When you go in there and you're doing care, and maybe you have 2 people are in and doing care with that person, and maybe you need to change their brief. And so now you're rolling them over and you're taking a cold wipe and you're talking to each other. Maybe you're laughing with each other. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're angry with each other. How does that person feel? And let's not forget that that person has an iceberg. And if anything traumatized them when they were younger, and somebody came into the room and they didn't feel like they belonged, which is one of the greatest things we can give someone. If they feel that they do not know the person, if they feel like somebody's making fun of them or is scaring them, how would it make them feel? if they had a catastrophic reaction or something under their iceberg that was scary. So this, to me, even at late stage memory loss, I still know that the person can feel. So when you walk into that person's room and you knock on their door and you say, "Hi, Kelly, it's me," and you share your name, and maybe that person sang a song years ago that you remember. It could have been a wedding song, it could have been a nursery song, or a song that they sang to you. And so when you go in that room and you sing, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." How does it make that person feel if you bring up a song that they once sang to you, or that they once sang before? Right? Music is so powerful. If you watched any documentaries on Tony Bennett, Lady Gaga, if you've seen anything with Glenn Campbell, you know the power of music. And the power of music actually comes from the limbic system, or the amygdala. And that's why oftentimes music can be so successful in supporting someone in late stage memory loss. I just love that slide deck. So again, takeaways for this chapter is really for both, which is to understand that if the person is causing harm, so the disclaimer, if they're not causing harm to themselves or others, our goal is to make them right 10 times out of 10. If they are upset and they're frustrated, regardless of what we're saying, that way, maybe you might want to have another person come in. You may want to walk away until they're safe and come back. And as long as they're safe. If they're not safe, then that's another situation where having a team or having someone or getting support from you is really important. Knowing what's under their iceberg, knowing things that you might want to avoid saying that can cause that upset, which is really important. So this is chapter 1, and I left it for the end because this wasn't a long program, and I wanted for you to understand how important you are. And so if you look at my book, chapter 1 is about you. We're no good to our people we care for if we don't take care of ourselves first. So chapter 1 is all about taking care of yourself and putting your own mask on first. So what if every day you felt emotionally strained? You were overwhelmed with working too many hours on your feet as a caregiver. Maybe you didn't eat right. And if you didn't have training in memory loss, maybe you felt the need to correct someone. No, you're wrong. I told you already. Stop that. Don't. Behave yourself. These words like this can cause you frustration just as much as it can cause the person that you're caring for. So in my book, I actually wrote an oath about caregivers. So this is what it is. So I'm going to have you guys read it out with me. So I will say yes when somebody offers help. Oftentimes we don't. And that is so important. On a personal level, I have my mom and dad who live with me in an in-law apartment in my house. They're 90 years old. When they moved in, it was in 2018. They were both able to drive. And as they were declining, my brother from Florida kept saying, "Hey, Kel, do you need any help?" Hey, I wrote the book. I should have answered correctly, but I didn't. I said, "No, I'm okay." Thank God he asked me 3 more times, because on the 3rd time I said, yes, I could use some help. And thanks to him, I'm able to continue to do what I do. And he's one of the caregivers for my folks with me. And so I know it's hard, but sometimes it's about ripping it off like a Band-Aid and asking for help when you need it. Through the association and Alzheimer's Association Foundation, there are many places out there, maybe even your local fire and police might have a program. You reach out and you definitely have a team on your side. I will forgive myself when I don't get it right. And that's important. I also want you to learn from it, but be okay and forgive yourself. This disease is not easy. It's also robbing you as well. And so make sure you're taking care of yourself and forgive yourself. I will reach out for my brass rings. You're going to reach out for yours, but you're also going to do your best to reach for the person you're caring for as well. And not be so white-knuckled as a caregiver sometimes can be and focusing on your goals. It's also looking at theirs as well. Live in the moment and yet plan for the future. Now, this is huge. My mom had elective knee surgery or hip surgery. And I thought I had it all planned out. And I was going to take 2 weeks off after her surgery and take care of her. But lo and behold, she had an infection brewing and needed a vacuum and needed to go into SNF, which is skilled nursing. And I didn't plan for that. I didn't know where I was going to bring her. I was a wreck, and thank God I had some friends in the industry to be able to give me some guidance on where I could have my mom go while she was in rehab. But it's so important to look at places, get comfortable, ask questions, find places that if in fact you ever did need support, that you had that availability and that knowledge, right, about communities. I will live in the moment and find, I will find moments in the day to self-reflect and not feel selfish in the process. Self-reflect, am I taking care of myself? You know, did I get to the mountains? Did I get to the foothills? Did I hike? Did I bike ride? Did I go, take that tub bath that I love? Make sure you're doing things to fill yourself up as well. I will pay attention to my health and follow up on challenges right away. I remember before COVID, I used to joke and say, I traveled for a living. I jumped in an airplane every single Monday for about 10 years. And so I remember there'd be times where I'd have to cancel my appointments and reschedule. Before COVID, that was easy to do. Now, don't cancel your appointment, because if you do, you may not be able to get seen for another year. And so make sure your priority too. I know caregivers. I'm one of them. And I get that sometimes we're good at taking care of the person we're supposed to be caring for, but we're not so good at taking care of ourselves. So don't cancel your appointments. Make sure you can get there at all costs. Find a team, find a support system to be able to, so that you can take care of yourself. I will provide and accept peacock moments which create what? Pride, beauty, and confidence. I will laugh appropriately in public and give myself permission to laugh in private, maintaining the respect and the dignity of the person I'm caring for. That's huge. And this reminds me of another book out there that I absolutely adore. It's called Kisses for Elizabeth. It's written by Stephanie Zeman, and she talks about this. And I had a perfect example of this. I had a resident once, and I walked into the room and I didn't realize she was angry. And she looked at me and I said, wow, you have the most beautiful eyes. And she said, I wouldn't know. I stand behind them. And I just thought that was the most profound thing I've ever heard in my life. I didn't laugh though, because I knew she was angry. Afterwards though, the nurse and I went into the room and I said, oh my God, that was the best thing I've ever heard all day. Or the best thing I think I'll ever hear about how pretty this woman's eyes were. So again, just understanding when not to laugh and make sure that we're respectful. I know this disease is tough and it does rob them of that as well. I will respectfully share what is under the person's iceberg to support the person I'm helping, and the person is helping me, I mean. So really making sure that what's under there, you don't be ashamed if somebody, if you've gone up behind someone and you went to maybe do care and they hit you, make sure you tell people, hey, listen, don't come up from behind. Sometimes I think I scared him one time, and this actually was something that, caused a challenge. So make sure that you share that information. Don't be afraid. I will draw from what I deem to be my belief system. This disease is tough. There's not a lot of diseases that aren't. But make sure that whatever your belief system is, whether it's faith-based, spiritual, the higher power of nature, whatever it is, find comfort and support and strength from that in your life. And so that is it for me, but I'd love to be able to take some questions. I don't know if Kristen, you can see what's in the chat room, or
Hi, Kelly. Yes.
Hi.
So one of the first ones we had was, how do you get the care facility to do a urine test when someone's presenting a change in mental status?
Yeah, so absolutely, that's where you'll work with the nursing, the wellness team. So the wellness team there, if you feel that there's a change, or sometimes they'll feel that there's a change and they'll do that, but you can absolutely do that. The other thing that you can do is call the doctors as well. So working, as a team, your team is the community as well as the physician that your loved one sees. So that's something. And I've known that in some communities, some people will say that they're just going to take them out to urgent care to do a urine to see if there's something going on as well. So there's a lot of different options, but I would definitely say work with the care team, the wellness team is definitely someone that you want to have them support you on that.
Thank you, Kelly. Another one we received was, do you cover in your book after a loved one has gone to a memory care facility, what's the best way for the family to advocate for them?
I think what's really important is making sure that you know the director of the program. So some communities will have engagement directors, people that oversee the neighborhood, the program. And then there's maybe a wellness section too that they'll, and so knowing that there are care plan meetings that happen quite frequently at the very beginning, and then after I think it's 60 days or 30 days, and then after that. So anytime there's a change in condition, it'll have another meeting. So when they invite you to those meetings, make every effort to be there. If you can be in person, that's wonderful. If not, I'm sure they can Zoom people in as well to be able to be a part of that process. So I think that being an advocate is huge, and just knowing the people that are caring there, and they do value. And listen, I say it all the time in my industry or where I work. I always say to the families, listen, we're great at what we do, but we're not half as good without you. The more you share what is under your loved one's iceberg, the more successful they'll become. And so a lot of communities will have a non-pharmacological form. So it doesn't have anything to do with the diagnosis, doesn't have anything to do with medications, but it has to do with, hey, Kelly brushes her teeth in the shower. Kelly's favorite meal is, enchiladas. So it would be something that would person-centered, that would help advocate for that person too. So I hope that answered your question.
I think it did. Does anyone have any other questions? I know we had a little discussion about, not feeling guilty about the time it takes to provide care and making time out of your own day to see those folks at the community, and just overall not feeling guilty about having some time for yourself.
Absolutely. And the visits too, the team at the community can also support you with how your visit should look like. I think that sometimes going in and enjoying their company, sometimes I've had caregivers say, well, I asked them, what did they do today? And they said nothing. Where'd they go? Nowhere. And so oftentimes if a person does have memory loss, it becomes difficult to recall the day. But maybe sharing about what was your day like, being able to spend time with them, especially, boy, we had a second summer today, right? This week. We have another beautiful day tomorrow. Get them out in that courtyard, enjoy the sunshine, get that vitamin D on your skin and get it on their skin. It's a beautiful way to connect. And then music. Your visit doesn't have to be words spoken to understand. It might be touch, it might be song, it might be enjoying a cookie together, reminiscing about the past, which, as I had mentioned, that which comes from the past is often far more real than the current. Enjoy those times and those moments with them.
I think that just about wraps it up, Kelly. Thank you so much. And we will be sharing this recording, so you can look out for that in your email. That was one of the last questions that we got, but I think that about wraps it up. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kristen, and thank you, Shannon, and thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.